They go to the elevators, which I guess are controlled by your mind here. Also, the sky is controlled by people's opinions on what the sky should look like, and it changes a lot. In case you needed a reminder, but the entire thing is like a dream. The entire thing would have been less subtle if the author had whacked the readers upside the head with a folding chair. We didn't need it spelled out for us. Thanks. Hello and welcome to Comprehension Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books and discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read through of the Wonderland Trials by Sara Ella. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 17. Maddie gets onto a bus that's shaped like a mushroom. The next 2 pages are nothing but a description of this bus. And it's not so much that I mind describing what a mushroom bus looks like, but when the narration starts to give the history of the bus to us, and I kind of want to chuck the book at the author. To make matters worse, after the history of the bus, we spend almost the same amount of time with Alice walking up to the second floor of the bus and choosing a seat. Like, I understand that this is a magical bus with magical seats, but it's almost like the author didn't understand that normal people don't want to read an entire page of Rebecca Black's "Which Seat Should I Choose?" After they set off, Maddie shows Alice how to access the bus's menu. This is where things leave the Alice in Wonderland territory and go straight to Harry Potter with sweets that make you say your words backwards for hours. Alice buys a little cake, cookie, whatever thing for 4 golden petals, which I sure hope that it's the best sweet she's ever eaten for a price like that, or that golden petals are worth way less than I'd imagine that they should be. A voice tells them that they've reached a stop. Alice watches as a bunch of people all wearing club wristbands get off. She describes that they're headed towards a hotel in the Wonderland's version of Big Bend. Too much time is spent on this, considering that Alice is a heart and she's not getting off there. The bus continues on, dropping off the diamonds at the London Eye next. The author legit took a singular idea about diamonds, them being expensive, and decided to turn it into every single Diamond team member's sole personality trait. They're all stuck-up, prissy divas. I think that I'm more hung up over the fact that the diamond dorms are in the cars of the London Eye. Those things aren't nothing but plexiglass. Imagine needing to live in those puppies. Yikes. I get that this is Wonderland, but still, why? The spades are at some place called the Pool of Tears. Alice is kind of, well, not exactly disappointed that Chess isn't on the bus with her. I don't exactly have a word to describe the feeling of blankness she expresses, but paying more attention to the fact that he isn't there at all than any of the other random players. After that, they finally get to what Maddie calls the Heart Palace, but it's actually only Buckingham Palace, which I know is nothing to scoff over, but still, why the cloak and dagger about it? Off the bus, they run into a boy who asks to be added to Alice's friend list. His nickname is the Knave. Alex accepts upon Maddie's earlier remarks to add their other teammates to her friend list. Chapter 18. At the palace, the literally still non-existent plot continues to stall out in favor of describing not Buckingham. And I know that I keep saying this in practically all of my videos, but I'm going to keep saying it until authors understand. It's fine to describe things, but what isn't okay is when the plot is constantly halted over and over simply to describe things. There needs to be a balance. And right now in Wonderland Trials, 18 chapters in, and there's barely any plot and way too much description. Blanche is there working as an advisor. Her screen name is the White Rabbit, in case you failed to get that from her name literally meaning white rabbit in French. Alice has 1,000,001 questions for her, but before she can form a single one, Blanche walks away. Plot. In my novel, don't be crass, darling. We haven't had a 3-page description over the salad forks yet. They go to the elevators, which I guess are controlled by your mind here. Also, the sky is controlled by people's opinions on what the sky should look like, and it changes a lot. In case you needed a reminder, but the entire thing is like a dream. The entire thing would have been less subtle if the author had whacked the readers upside the head with a folding chair. We didn't need it spelled out for us. Thanks. Alice then spends yet another moment being mopey over Chess, which I still fail to understand why she's so upset about the entire thing. It kinda sounded to me like nobody could hold your hand while you found Wonderland. If the author was any good, I may even go so far as to say that the discovery of Wonderland was like a discovery of the self, but she's not that self-aware of her own novel, so I'll leave it at that. Maddie takes her to the girls' dorm where there are 3 occupied rooms and 1 unoccupied. Maddie tells Alice to get settled for a moment and that she'll introduce her to the 3 other girls later. Alice tries to go into her room only to find that she can't. There's no handle and it asks for her name instead. She naturally says Alice, seeing as how it is her name, but only wants her screen name of Ace. The interior of the room is completely empty with plain white walls, and the girl tells her that it's a blank canvas. The girl introduces herself as Sophia, which she explains is her real name. Despite Sophia having told Alice this, Alice decides that her own name is too boring and normal. Yeah, I've got nothing about that. Sophia briefly asks about the skill that sets everybody apart. Alice doesn't know hers and barely seems to understand what it is that Sophia is asking about. Sophia says that Maddie's talent is... Okay, hold up. The author sat down to write a retelling of Alice in Wonderland Hunger Games, but the most magical power that she can think of to give Maddie is that she's really good at brewing tea, which so is the rest of any good English woman. You ain't special. Sophia continues on and says that she was born to normal parents, that when they discovered what their daughter was, they wanted her to get registered, and so she went down there ready to do it. But once there, she saw girls treating the Wonders like dogs. Sophia looked over and saw this flower changing colors and decided that it was a sign. She couldn't go through with it. Another girl shows up then and asks to be on Alice's friend list. Her name is Willow, but she's glaring at Alice so much that Alice is rather hesitant to accept. She also calls Alice a weed, which is quickly followed by literal nonsense about Alice having conned her way in and even having fooled Sophia, despite this being the first time Sophia and Alice have met and Sophia was mostly talking about herself. But sure, every terrible young adult novel needs a mean girl for no real reason other than to stir up unnecessary drama. After Willow, or Will as her username identifies her as, leaves, Sophia tries to excuse Will's terrible behavior away, says that Will's normal parents disowned her and she was homeless for a long time. Which is a massive case of, while I'm sorry that it happened to you, that's not an excuse to be terrible to other people. Alice is interested when Sophia mentions the first trial. Alice's inner monologue briefly mentions Charlotte, but her sister's disappearance is still ranking low in comparison towards playing a deathmatch card game. After this, Maddie shows up again to give the plot an insanely half-hearted shove back towards the actual plot. But before the 4 of them can go to dinner, Alice has to put on the uniform, or rather, the uniform, since the only requirement seems to be that it be red and black. There's a cool bit where Alice's thoughts manage to change her old-school uniform into the correct colors, or at least it would be cool if the narration didn't constantly stop to give us endless descriptions about stuff that nobody cares about. Then they finally go down where Alice hopes to meet the last 2 members of the Heart team. One of them is Jack, as in Jack Be Nimble. We've reached a point where I'm not even going to complain about how this isn't even Alice in Wonderland anymore because I simply do not care. The last boy isn't there, but Blanchy loads them up into some kind of transportation thing and takes them to a central hub where the other teams are converging. There is Lady Scarlet, and despite my confusion over if Scarlet was Blanchy earlier, the 2 of them are not actually the same person. Bad writing is bad, and the author should feel bad. Chapter 19. Alice is completely floored to see the Red Queen, not because she's mystical or magical or wanted by every single normal person. No, it's because Scarlet looks exactly like Charlotte, and of course there's going to be fake hidden depths, of which we, the readers, have to endure as Alex explains all of it to us like we're somehow too stupid to grasp. Then there's her desire to keep her Wonder identity a secret, not just from society, but from me. Her desire to keep her identity a secret can't possibly have anything to do with the fact that they wound up Wonders and literally brand them before treating them worse than dogs. Nope, it's all a ploy to keep Alice in the dark. Of course, Alice's musings would probably go over much better if not only she wasn't so self-absorbed, but also, smart. I've said it before and I'm going to keep saying it until the author understands. In the source material, Alice is supposed to be 7, so it's mildly amusing when she says things such as London is the capital of Paris and Paris is the capital of Rome. It's not half as amusing when a 16-year-old girl says stuff along the same lines. Also, it's beyond maddening that we need half a page of Alice spelling out for the readers why she thinks that 2 women who look remarkably similar could somehow be related. We get it. Stop treating your audience like they're somehow too stupid to understand. Anyway, I'm literally still on page 1 of the chapter, and I've already got a huge headache. Blanchy stands up and says some stuff about the trials. I mainly skimmed it because reading more than one word from Blanchy is not making my headache any better. Maddie turns to Alice and pointedly says that Scarlet is making those literal children perform for her own entertainment and little else, which at least this book has that much self-awareness. I'm not sure that Hunger Games could say the same, that everybody knows how dangerous the trials are, but that Scarlet dresses them up to make them more appealing, so that kids will continue to show up and entertain her. However, Alice refuses to address this right now, probably for plot reasons. It wasn't until Her Majesty humbly acknowledges Blanche's adoration that At White Rabbit continues. Was mentioning her screen name seriously necessary, or is this simply the author congratulating herself for being clever? Anyway, even the author seems bored with the grand opening speech, despite the fact that she wrote this. Alice is bored and can't focus on the rest of Blanche's speech, even knowing that she should. I guess after that, the speech ended because Jack starts to speak with her. He talks briefly about how they've both chosen usernames based on the position that they play in the trial. But the idea of him going by Jack simply because it's clever is completely ruined by him explaining that his legal name is literally Jack B. Nimble II. I cannot. Once again, stating that the author was mildly clever with Maddie's name, and every name since has been getting worse and worse. After that, the author finally decides to get back to the actual plot. Blanche continues her speech, which basically amounts to be the best to win the most points, and win the trial. Good luck! After Blanche steps down, the head of the spade team comes up and asks a bunch of riddles. Although the rest of the hearts, minus Knave, who acts like he could not care less, are quick to chime in with the correct answers, Alice feels as though there's some kind of hidden depth to them, that the answers couldn't possibly be that simple. Could they? The man asked 3 riddles before asking the famous "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" It would be something if the author could actually turn that into an interesting plot point, but my expectations couldn't be lower at this point, so I'm not going to hold out for that. Before he leaves, he says that answering the 4 riddles will help them get started. Alice wonders why Blanche had tried to give her a leg up, and if it wasn't cheating to have been given one of the 4 riddles earlier. After that, they settle into their meals. Jack randomly points out some of the other trainers to Alice, although I'm not sure why we should care. Is this going to be important later? Will the Duchess of Diamonds be plot relevant? Alice looks around the room and she seemed to see Chess talking with one of the female teammates. Not banging her on the table, literally sitting and having a conversation with her. Yeah, I don't get it either, but it only makes Alice's opinion of him even worse. Finally, Scarlet rises and gives this grand speech about how great Wonderland is and how safe it is for them. I kinda don't care, if only because the story has yet to shut up about the topic since it started. We don't need the literal Queen of Wonderland to tell us this. Scarlet then makes flowers bloom on the wall behind them. Despite being in a place with wonder literally in the name, this somehow amazes everybody, like they've never seen anything like it in their entire lives. After she finishes, the dinner plates vanish and are replaced by plates of Yorkshire pudding. Alice hadn't been able to eat much of her pot roast, but she decides she doesn't care about making herself sick on her dessert. Chapter 20. Alice wakes up the next morning feeling well rested. In this book's center tone, Alice expresses exactly 1 sentence worth of worry over her missing sister before jumping back into her own self-absorbed problems. Alice starts to look through the book Blanche had given her in the hopes of it drumming up some sort of clue for her, even though she admits that it's probably a slim chance at this point. The chapter about the trials is listed in order of the year they originated, with older games at the front of the tome and more modern games near the end. The entire book reeks of the poison for Cusco, but this overly long sentence is honestly pissing me off so much. Chronological order. The singular phrase is chronological order. Use your words, but way less of them. The author name drops a bunch of modern-ish games as chapter titles, all of which are meaningless to Alice. Needless to say, the entire thing reads like, "How do you do, fellow kids?" Alice then uses the WV to start typing up notes. However, this section is only relevant if you hadn't been paying attention this entire time. If you're going to jump into the book at a random point, this would be it, since it sums everything up so nicely for you. After summing up the plot in a few bullet points, Alice then moves on to talking about suspects. I see that term loosely since I'm not sure that there actually is some grand conspiracy. This book sure hasn't convinced me of that fact despite non-stop talking about missing kids. The singular thing of value that Alice adds to this is the question of who her parents are and why they abandoned her. This has not been brought up once in 20 chapters, so that's probably why it stands out so much. After breakfast, they go through a hedge maze to get to... Oh dear lord. It's the freaking Tea Party, Sara Ella style. I'll save the book sometime and get a headache right now. Right off the bat, Nave continues to be physically distant for the rest of the team and aloof. When Willow calls him out on his antisocial behavior, he picks a fight with her. Right as Alice is wondering why Blanche isn't starting their training, Scarlet shows up. She startles Alice, someone she has to be added to Alice's friend list. Alice will not shut up about suspects and quickly accepts. Jack asks if Scarlet is their trainer. Scarlet says no, but not without half a page of worthless padding. It's also revealed that Nave is Scarlet's nephew, and his surname is Hart. Nave calls out Scarlet and the scam of her trials. The idea that the trials are supposed to be for Scarlet to find an error, but not one single person has been able to complete them yet. And of course, it's no coincidence the unbeatable trial is always yours, Nave says. Perhaps you don't want anyone to actually win the trials. Then you'd have to name an error, isn't that right? Alice is only shocked that this rumor is actually true, so she stands up and says that refusing to let people complete the trials and to name an error makes Scarlet look suspicious and like she's somehow behind the missing children, which I think is one of those halfway there moments. Alice is right, but also wrong about Scarlet's motivations. Scarlet only gives a mini speech about the duties and expectations of being royalty before she leaves. Willow congratulates Alice for having spoken her mind. Blanche then says that their actual trainer is running late while looking at her pocket watch, and the entire scene is so dumb and trying too hard that I want to drop kick a printer. Blanche encourages them to work on those riddles. Some time passes, and the only thing of value Alice has to say is that the fourth riddle is impossible. Except that it's not. There is an answer to it. Is the riddle answer dumb? Yes, but so are most riddle answers when you stop and think about them. It actually wouldn't surprise me if the author herself had never looked into the actual answer for the riddle she's woven into the plot. They drink tea to perk themselves up and then break for lunch, but as they eat, they begin to question their answers for the first two riddles, which is probably a clue that they're really overthinking things. Then they start to ponder if the riddle order is somehow important and focus on that instead. They look at them in reverse order and decide that maybe the answers put together will form a key phrase. Right as they're trying to puzzle out the third riddle, Chess shows up. Maddie seems like she'd been expecting him. Seems as though he put in for a team transfer and now he's on their team. Of course, can't have Alice doing a Romeo and Juliet across team lines now, can we? That's too many references. But Alice now questions why he's there suddenly and if she can even trust him. Jack is pleased Chess is there, especially since their male-female ratio is skewed in favor of the women. Alice has only known that Jack is another Chess fan. Chess introduces himself as the team king. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all of my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've read all of my main Snarks, you can find even more Snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just 1 cent per word. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you aren't following me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!